Hi, Ben Kingsley here. In our best-selling book, The Armchair Guide to Property Investing, How to Retire on $2,000 a Week, we talk about the property investment formula. Now that includes asset selection, borrowing power, cash flow management, and defense. Now in this how-to video, I'm going to take a deeper dive into defense. But when you're thinking about defense, what am I actually talking about? Well, us human creatures, we are interesting to say the least, and a lot of the time we act irrationally. Now, why is that? Well, I thought I'd introduce you to our brain. Now, I am no neuroscientist or medical professor here, so please forgive me. I'm not necessarily one to know all the pieces, but I've been doing some interesting investigations into why are we so illogical sometimes when it comes to our money design and also when it comes to making financial decisions. So it's these financial decisions that people struggle with. And why is that the case? Well, let me just introduce you to our human brain. And I'll start at, so going clockwise, this area here looks after our touch and pressure and how we understand that. And taste comes from this area through here, and body awareness through here. Now where we learn to read and our language comes from this section of our brain. Our vision from the back area here, coordination and balance through the bottom area here, through our brain stem. It's all about our breathing and body temperature, swallowing, those type of things. Interesting, if you didn't know this, our facial recognition comes from this area of the brain. Our hearing sort of makes sense from the side here, comes from where the ears are located, so we get our hearing through here. Smell comes from the frontal part, and then speech from this area here, and motor control from this area here. That's basically all of our motor controls. But when it comes to financial decisions, there's an area here in what's called the frontal lobe, right? And this is where we do our higher thinking. Now, higher thinking, we're talking about things like making decisions, judgment calls, processing further information, thinking about short, medium and longer term objectives. Now that's all done in this area here called the frontal lobe. Now inside that frontal lobe is the neocortex. So in here we're talking about some areas that help us with our decision making. Now when it comes to financial decisions, we have an area in here called the nucleus accumbens. Now, I know it's a fancy name, and what that means basically is that is our pleasure area. So we get pleasure when we make financial gain, and that's understandable. We invest and we make that financial gain. But sometimes there's also fear, or what we call risk reward. Now, where our fear comes from in terms of understanding that fear, that comes from an area called, and hopefully I'll get the pronunciation right, the amygdala. All right, and that area there, the amygdala, I'm struggling there, I know, but that's basically where that comes from. Now, inside that, there's things like the hippocampus and those type of things. But effectively, what's happening inside this area, which is, this, prefrontal cortex area, this neocortex, is that's trying to help us make decisions on what's right, what's wrong, is it right to do, is it not right to do? And for some of us, we really struggle with that. Okay, so we have more concern, and we all know in our human behaviour, someone takes money off us, we feel a little bit more angry, we get some money and that feeling passes. Okay, so there is also an area in there that we talk about in terms of the insula. And the insula is like that control mechanism that sort of slows us down. Say, okay, get calm, okay, we might have just put a bet on, we've had a big win, calm down, calm down. And for some people, they're able to calm down easier than others. And for other people, in terms of their amygdala, that is obviously, telling them that to be careful and to be risk around that. Now, what has that got to do with defense? Well, if you think about it, we actually can make informed decision when it comes to, insuring our car, insuring our house, and basically putting those insurance policies in place. But when it comes to the most valuable thing, which is the human being, do we focus on income protection, trauma, life, TPD, those types of insurances? Because if we are the major breadwinners, ultimately our health is going to be our wealth. And if something does happen to us, which on occasion, 1 in 3 of us up in the lead up to around 55 to 60 years of age is going to experience some medical diagnosis that could put our health at risk, Why aren't we being logical about that? In terms of we're happy to, again, protect the car, but not necessarily protect our future income. Now, when that comes back to the property investment formula, we talk about cash flow management and also borrowing. So if we're going into debt, we're buying a good investment property, what actually happens here is we need to make sure that inside the cash flow modelling that we do, that we provision for those things in terms of income protection, life, trauma, total and permanent disability. Because if we've got debt, we want to be able to call on that money so we don't have to rush and sell that property, which means we won't get any investment return. So it is absolutely fascinating in terms of where we make these decisions here, at the front part of our mind, in terms of being able to do that. But what we ultimately want to make sure is we're making those decisions. The other part of defence that's also important is when we talk about the asset. So it's all about mitigating risk. So when we understand that there might be high risk, which we do understand when it comes to cars and the cost of repairing cars, yet we may not have had an accident for 20 or 30 years, we still pay our insurance policy. But when it comes to the property, we potentially have higher risk from tenant damage, from damage to the property through water leaks and those types of things. So it's really important that we have house and content insurance as an investor, but we also have tenancy risk insurances, for tenant damage, for them not paying their rent and those types of things as well. So when you're building out your property portfolio to retire off the passive income, it's really important that you factor in those costs into your cash flow management. And then you'll start to think about defence is actually an asset. Yes, that's right. It's an asset because you're paying something and you're protecting yourself. Now, hopefully, you never have to call on that asset, because if something's gone wrong with your health or something's gone wrong with the property, we have to call on those insurance policies. So, touch wood, we want to make sure that we never have to call on them. But if we do, they're there and available for us. And that reduces our risk. And in theory, that makes sense. That means our decisions that we're making here in our frontal lobe, in our neocortex area, is smart decisions about money. Smart decisions about money design, ensuring that your brain is working for you and you are making really clever financial decisions. So thanks very much for watching this how-to session. If you want to check out any of our other how-to sessions, they're all available on the empowerwealth.com.au website. Just search for our how-to sessions. We've got sessions for beginners, intermediate and advanced when it comes to investing in property and also managing your money. Thanks for watching, and until next time, we'll see you later.